Yeah, so for this one, you're probably going to want to minimize the video. There's not going to be any visuals. It's just going to be a fat guy sitting on a couch. But if you can handle that, great. If not, by all means. I feel kind of raw today. As you can tell, I'm unshaven. Haven't even had lunch yet because it's fourth wall breaking time. It's almost noon. I'm still in a tank top and whatnot. Um, was just having one of those mornings that were a little rough and decided that of all times, now was probably the time I wanted to get something off my chest. So we're going to get into it.
This is fine.
Okay, so we're going to try this again. I have a 45-minute rant that I don't really want to edit down that's about this topic, but we're going to try a take two. So you might be wondering why, just slightly, um, why I haven't done a whole lot very intensive on the channel. By intensive, I mean that I was doing some monthly distro reviews. I was trying out, a 30-day challenge or whatever, and I took a step back. I decided to do some lighter content. I will be recording a Linux Mint video for those that asked. It's my favorite distro. Of course, I have to cover it, but I had to kind of take a step back. And there's reasons for that. Number one, I've just been stressed out a lot lately. There's a lot of things going on behind the camera that you guys aren't privy to. And I will admit, have affected me as well. Not just mentally, but also physically. Um, and you can even tell. So, but I'm doing okay. Things have improved. Just a lot of life things. Adulting sucks. Um, and dealing with life things sucks. And we can leave those two things at that. I've had something going on for the last 3 years, and I didn't know who to talk to about it. And I started thinking about it. Hold on a second. Yeah, my face is good. I didn't know who to talk to about it because it involves people that I have worked with, and not everybody in there is at fault, but it is a good example of how volunteering can become a ball and chain. In fact, that's what I want to call the video is don't make your volunteering become ball and chaining. I think it's very important that people give back to their communities when they feel they can do so, financially, physically, spiritually, mentally, like whatever you can provide it. Um, as long as you feel like you can handle that. My big takeaway at the end of this will be never extend yourself out further than you can maintain. And I did it for the second time in my life. I'm approaching 30. It's scary, I know. And it scares me a little bit because I'm in my family that's about midlife. And in a way, much like how my brother has expressed, we're hitting midlife and we're not entirely sure about our life's decisions. And so I'm going through that turmoil as well. I've made some questionable decisions. I started a YouTube channel. That's questionable enough, right? So it kind of dawned on me the other day that I've taken this month of July. This is being recorded in July. Um, don't know what date it is, so I can't break your fourth wall for you. But do know that this is being recorded in July, and at the end of July, actually. So this is something that's been going on for the last 3 years, and the best way I can put it is, I know a few people who are coders, And maybe from a project management perspective, the TLDR is imagine the following scenario. You work on an app. This particular app maybe deals with audio and video. Say it's like a widget for some application that allows you to monitor and change audio levels and whatnot. Okay. So obviously there's multiple parts to this project. There's a GUI side, there's an audio subsystem side. Maybe this works across multiple platforms, right? And so you got to worry about that. Now in this case, we'll make it simple. We're just worried about one particular platform, platform X, we'll say Linux. Um, and so we're only worried about coding for Pipewire in this case, but not getting into the weeds because this is not a real project. But this is the best analogy I could come up with. Now imagine you love this project, you use this project, you want to contribute to this project. As something one might do, you love something, you want to make it better. You want to contribute. You want to volunteer to the project. And you have the spare time, you got a lot going on in your life, like I do. You got a little bit of spare time. You know what? I'll give them some of my spare time every month to do this. And so you go about it. You contact the project, they put you on as a part-time developer. What you work on is not particularly important. They ask you to do some code for to get Pipewire levels working correctly in your app. And don't at me for the technical details. I will immediately just ban you. This is not what this comment's about. Anyway, the code you contribute is not super important, but it does help get the app out. And you feel good about yourself. And let's say you drag your friend in with you too, and she helps you as well, or he, whoever. So a little bit later on down the road, they ask you to do a little bit more because their project manager is leaving, and we'd like you to take over the entire audio subsystem part of the code. Your friend can handle the audio subsystem, you can handle the GUI, and that part of the app is just yours to deal with while we find a new project manager. Everybody else will deal with the rest of it. Okay, sure. Further on down the road, now this is taking up a considerable amount of your time. You're working on all the audio stuff. You're having to make sure the GUI lines up and looks correct, and that ties it into the audio system correctly, and so on and so forth. So you and your friend are now spending a considerable amount of time on this every single week. Virtually the free time you have, keep in mind you still both have day jobs, is very limited. In fact, in many cases, you're just getting done with work and doing this job until late at night, and then you're crashing and going to bed. You're not really having a personal life. You're still volunteering. Nobody's getting paid here. Now turn around and they hire somebody finally in who's paid to be a manager of this project. The previous person was paid. This person's paid. And you're like, oh, thank God. They can start managing. They can start diverting resources. We can start unloading this project. Now imagine for the first 6 months, that doesn't happen. This person shows up and doesn't do jack squat for 6 months. And then suddenly decides that they don't understand what you're doing. Half of what you do is their job. And maybe you had a Trello board before that laid out tasks. This particular individual just up and decides that that's no longer a thing because YOLO, right? And they turn to you and say, you know what? Stop working on the project. We don't want you working on this anymore because half of this is my job. Why don't you just fuck off and work on this little bitty tiny piece of dialogue box for the audio stuff, and don't talk to anybody else. Just get this done. We're going to exclude you from communications because you don't need to know anything about the app to work on this. And if you could just handle that, because I don't understand anything about it, and I don't want to understand anything about it. So just handle that, go away, don't talk to anybody. We don't want to talk to you either, and move on. How does that make you feel? You just listened to me describe the last 3 years of me volunteering at this church that me and my wife go to. The TLDR is we didn't get paid for any of this. And I'm not saying we needed to get paid, but when you leave your day job and have a second job that's volunteering, there is something called volunteering. It's optional, right? You should want to show up and do this stuff. And we had reached a point after 3 years, not a single pat on the back, not a single thanks. And the lady they rehired for the position that left basically came in and told us to get out, more or less, and go work on a part of the part of this that she didn't care about. So to get out of the example, we were volunteering at our church, is what we really were doing. I wanted to do the example to see if some software people might understand from a project management perspective how offended we really were at how this went down and why we're probably not going to volunteer. It'll be a stretch for us to go back, even, but we'd go back for the people that actually care about us and that we actually like talking to and hanging out with outside of church. But essentially, we were asked to volunteer for the audio visual stuff. And now keep in mind, I'm not an audio engineer, nor is my wife. I'm a design engineer by day. I do dabble in IT at night, just like this channel, and a little bit with Linux. I'm pretty much exclusively Linux these days, and learning a lot about it. And yeah, where I'm going at with it is we lost the manager that was managing the program over there for essentially, they called it a worship leader. Essentially, what that position did was manage everything short of what the pastor immediately has to do. So he has to do his slides, he has to come dressed, he has to have a topic, and he has to line up guests if we have guests, so on and so forth. He's usually very well planned out anyway. He's usually planned out like 6+ months typically. Last I heard, it was almost a year. And he gives talks every single week. Everything else is someone else's problem. He even manages his own mic pack. We just sound check him in, or we're sound checking him in, I should say. So when their original manager left, we were kind of left up a creek, and then the guy that we were volunteering for left, who was managing the live stream that they had at this church. Now we've turned around and have a bigger problem. We're now managing a live stream week in, week out that must go on because the board over here demands that it goes on. And so does the band and whatnot. We must have a live stream. The church needs this live stream. So if you don't do it or there's a problem, you get your ass handed to you. If you do your job perfectly right, nobody says a word. It was very unfulfilling. And to top it all off, the real nail in the coffin was they hired this new chick. I give her a slight break for the first several months. She had a child right after they hired her. Very unfortunate timing. So the first 6 months, she did nothing related to her job. Very little. She did some managing of the band, but the first several months, she wasn't even there. And then she took off with the youth on a youth trip and left us hanging and didn't even tell us. She didn't even tell us the month she took off for having her child. She was taking the month off until we all showed up at practice and the pianist got a text message that said, "Oh yeah, I'm off this month. You'll have to figure it all out." I slowly started learning different jobs I was doing were suddenly her job when she stepped on my feet and walked over me and started doing it. Literally. They use a piece of software over here that does presentation of slides, and it is a collaborative, capable system, and I started doing stuff and she started railroading over me because she thought it was her job, which it realistically was. I'm not arguing with what she should or shouldn't be doing. I'm arguing with the way she went about it. And to top it all off, telling my wife off that we needed to just go handle the live stream because she doesn't understand it and shows clear signs of not wanting to understand it. She just wants us to go in the corner and handle that because it's too confusing. It's too technical. She's not a technical person, not a computer person at all. Uses a Mac. That should say enough. And just basically told us to up and fuck off over a text message. Two different ones, actually. And chose the one person that we were bringing up to speed to give my wife a break so we could go on vacation like humans and not have to deal with these people. That turned around and became a further disaster. So right now, for the month of July, I told him we were out. And that after the month of July, we would discuss and decide if we were coming back or not. And I mean it. I will probably visit socially this weekend. I think that's fair. Because again, when I say visit socially, I mean the people that I am friends with, that I talk to, that I care about, that care about me. Those are who I'm going to visit. I'm not running any audio. I'm not running a live stream. I'm not doing anything. And my wife will eventually come in. We even talked about forming a small group with these people, just to hang out with, just to have adults to just chill with. Something as a, almost a midlifer at this point, you don't realize is that young kids honestly don't want anything to do with you, which might even be what this worship leader's problem is with us. I don't know. Maybe it's because we're older and she's younger and, management styles change. I get it. But I asked her for two things. I asked her to plan out more than the week that is currently happening so I could know and plan ahead. And, I also asked, what else was it I asked for? Oh, I asked to give my wife as much of a break as she needed. One of those things happened from what I've talked to the ladies that we worked with in the live stream room who were helping us out, are now carrying the burden loosely every week when she shows up to church and this lady approaches her and says, "Hey, can you start the live stream?" And then walks away. So she's not planning ahead. Just the other day, I watched her freak out on stage because she booked. We used to have some of the youth, the kids at the church, run the slides because that's a really easy thing to do to advance the slide to the next one for everyone. It's an easy task for a kid. They can feel like they're contributing to the church. Everybody wins. Unless you're this chick who doesn't plan ahead and doesn't schedule things, assumes kids are going to show up and handle it. And then when we stop managing it, the kids no longer have a list to follow. They don't show up. In fact, the kid that would have probably run it, because he and his brother typically do, she brought him on stage to sing with them and then wondered when they started the first song why nothing happened. The slides went black because the countdown went out because there was nobody sitting there to run the slides. And it was at that moment that she realized that she messed up. And to be honest, at this point, as much as it probably sounds malicious, I've convinced myself, and I think I've convinced my wife, to just sit back and watch it burn, watch her burn. I think that's the right plan here, is to let her learn from her mistakes. Have us sit back. Maybe we'll do some live stream. Maybe we won't. I've learned a lot about it. I've learned a lot about DAX, OBS, recording, streaming, bit rates and things like that. And being able to mess with the soundboards and whatnot. You learn a lot of things. You do. And it's made me a better person. That part of it I don't hate. But what's the takeaway here? Well, I don't want to sound like a negative nanny and tell you don't ever volunteer. By all means, I have volunteered numerous times. In fact, on occasion, I have volunteered as a moderator for things. I have volunteered a number of times to help my wife do things. Um, and I know it's different when it's family, but I've also helped friends move on more than one occasion. And all it was when do I need to be there and what do you need me to do? And we took care of it as much as we could. So I volunteered before, and like I said, for multiple Discord servers, I have volunteered myself for things in multiple places in my life, not just Discord, I should say. And it's been fine. My wife and I have even volunteered for other things at this church, and it's been perfectly fine. So it's one of those things. I think you should pick and choose your battles carefully. And in this case, me and her let it go too far, and we're too willing to just say, yeah, sure, we'll take that on. For me, work became overwhelming. I was working 50, 60 hours for a long time, probably a good 2 years. And I finally threw my hands up, much like today, and just said, you know what? I'm not working today. Or you know what? I'm just not going to deal with this BS. I'm going to let it slide right off of me. I'm going to let somebody else take the burden than me. When you've given so much over 3 years, maybe it's time to take for a little while. And that's where her and I are at. I think we're going to take for a little bit and we're going to heal. And we'll see what happens after that. So I know this isn't my normal tech video, but hopefully a little bit of like a project manager perspective. I've not done a lot of project management in my time. I have mostly just done engineering. But I can tell you, having watched numerous projects be mismanaged over the years, there is certainly a way to manage a project, and there is a more or less correct answer to managing a project. And I have witnessed that is certainly a way numerous times. But yeah, if you like the video, you can go ahead and like it and whatnot. You can feel free to watch any of my other content and whatnot. A lot of it will be more upbeat than this. This is just me getting this off my chest, hopefully clearing my throat and getting back to the spin of things. I'm going to record a Linux Mint video this afternoon and get that edited down. It will be virtualized. I have reasons for that. Unless the Mint upgrade tool is available, then we might look into that too. It's my favorite distribution. It really does get me feeling good about Linux. And just the good work that goes behind it. I hope you like the video. If you don't, that's perfectly fine. In the comments when we get into things here, I'd love to hear some of your own project management tales and whatnot. What do you guys have had happen in your life? I don't need the gritty details, but what have you guys had happen from a management perspective that just made you facepalm and look at, why did I let it go this far? Why did I get myself entangled in all this mess? So, and yeah, with that, hope you all have a good day.